The huge alien ships came out of the dark space like angry metal clouds. There were so many of them that they blocked out the stars. Each ship was bigger than a city, and they moved together like a pack of space wolves hunting for prey. Admiral Techmore stood in his command room, looking down at the small blue planet called Earth. His four eyes glowed red with excitement. This would be easy, he thought. The humans were weak and divided. They fought each other more than they worked together. His scouts had watched their movies and TV shows for years. Humans were just animals who had learned to use tools. How many ships do they have? Techmore asked his officer. Only 300, small ones, Admiral, and some tiny space stations around their planet. Techmore laughed. His fleet had over 5,000 warships. Each one could destroy a human city with one shot. This will be over before lunch, he said. Far below on Earth, Captain Hyun-woo Park stood on the bridge of Defense Station Aurora. Through the big window, he could see the alien fleet getting closer. Sweat ran down his face as he counted the enemy ships on his screen. There were too many. Way too many. Sir, they're sending us a message, said his communication officer. Put it through, Hyun-woo said. A scary alien face appeared on the screen. It had 4 red eyes and sharp teeth. Humans of Earth, the alien said in broken English. I am Admiral Techmore of the Vorthan Collective. Your planet now belongs to us. You have 1 hour to surrender. If you fight, we will destroy every city on your world. The message ended. The bridge was quiet. Everyone looked scared. What are your orders, Captain? Asked Lieutenant Commander Mina Lee. Hyun-woo looked at his small crew. They were brave, but what could they do against such a huge enemy? We fight, he said. We may not win, but we don't give up. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Dr. So-Young Kim was working late at an ancient site in Turkey. She studied old stone circles that people built over 10,000 years ago. Most people thought these stones were just religious temples, but So-Young thought they were something more. Her computer started beeping loudly. The numbers on her screen were going crazy. That's impossible, she said to herself. The stones were giving off energy, lots of energy, more than a nuclear power plant. She called her friend Dr. Jin Ho in Egypt. Jin Ho, are you seeing anything strange at the pyramids? So-Young. I was just about to call you. The pyramids are glowing, not with light but with some kind of energy my machines can barely measure. What's happening? Before So-Young could answer, her phone rang again. It was Dr. Ara from Stonehenge in England. So-Young, something big is happening. All the old monuments around the world are waking up at the same time. So-Young felt her heart beating fast. This was no coincidence. The alien invasion and the awakening of the ancient sites were connected somehow. In space, Admiral Techmore was getting ready to attack. But something was wrong with his sensors. Strange energy patterns were coming from the planet below. The patterns looked familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen them before. Admiral, said his science officer, these energy readings don't match human technology. They're much more advanced. Impossible, Techmore said. Humans barely understand space travel. They can't create energy like this. But the energy kept growing stronger. On Earth, people in small villages started having strange dreams. Old men and women who had never left their towns began drawing symbols in the dirt. The same symbols appeared everywhere, in Korea, in Peru, in Africa, in Ireland. Captain Hyun-woo felt something strange happening to him too. His mind felt clearer than ever before. He could see patterns in the alien fleet movement that he couldn't see before. It was like someone was whispering battle strategies in his ear. Captain, Mina said, looking confused, I'm getting reports from all over Earth. Our pilots are flying in perfect formation without any orders. It's like they all know what to do. Dr. So-Young watched her instruments with wide eyes. The energy from the stone circles was reaching into space. It was touching every human on the planet and beyond. But it was also doing something else. It was sending a message to the alien fleet. In his command ship, Admiral Techmore suddenly felt afraid. The energy patterns weren't just familiar. They were ancient, very ancient. His people had legends about such patterns, stories about the old ones who came before. the ones who disappeared long ago. "Sir," his officer said with fear in his voice, "the humans aren't responding like we expected. They're not running away or panicking, they're getting organized, really organized." Thekmore looked at the planet below. Maybe this conquest wouldn't be as easy as he thought. Maybe the humans were hiding something. Something big. The ancient stones continued to sing their silent song across the stars, and something that had slept for thousands of years was finally waking up. The energy spread across Earth like invisible lightning. In every country, every continent, the ancient stone monuments began to glow with power that scientists couldn't understand. The energy moved through the ground, through the air, and somehow through space itself. Dr. So-Young Kim ran between the stone circles at her dig site. Her machines were beeping so loudly she had to cover her ears. The energy readings were off the charts. But something even stranger was happening to the people around her. Old Park Min-sik, a farmer who lived near the site, was drawing pictures in the sand with a stick. He was 70 years old and had never been to school, but the symbols he drew looked like complex mathematical equations. "Mr. Park," So-Young called to him. "What are you drawing?" The old man looked up with confused eyes. "I don't know," he said. "The pictures just come into my head. They feel important." So-Young took photos of his drawings and sent them to her computer. Her analysis program went crazy. The symbols contained information about star maps, energy patterns, and something that looked like building instructions for machines she couldn't recognize. In space, Captain Hyunwoo felt the change first as a tingling in his brain. Then suddenly, his mind exploded with new thoughts. He could see the alien fleet movement in 3 dimensions, like a giant chess game. But more than that, he understood why each ship was positioned where it was. "Mina," he said to his second-in-command, "move our fighters to positions 7G through 12K. Lieutenant Commander Mina Lee looked at him strangely. "Sir, we don't have position codes like that. Our grid system only goes to F." Hyunwoo blinked. Where had those numbers come from? But somehow, he knew exactly where every human ship should be positioned. "Trust me," he said. "Send the coordinates I'm about to give you." As he spoke the numbers, Mina's eyes grew wide. The positions formed a perfect geometric pattern around Earth, a pattern that would create maximum defensive coverage with minimum ships. "How did you know that?" she asked. "I don't know," Hyunwoo said honestly. "It just feels right." Similar things were happening all over Earth. In London, Dr. Ara was watching Stonehenge with amazement. The huge stones weren't just glowing, they were humming. The sound was so low that people couldn't hear it, but animals could. Birds were flying in perfect circles around the monument. Dogs were howling in harmony. Even the fish in nearby rivers were swimming in strange patterns. At the same time, people living near Stonehenge were gathering without being told to come. They walked toward the monument like sleepwalkers, but their eyes were awake and bright. When they reached the stones, they began to stand in specific spots, forming human patterns that matched the stone circles. "It's happening everywhere," Dr. Jin-ho called So-Young from Egypt. "The pyramids are active and people are gathering here too. But So-Young, there's something else. The people know things they shouldn't know. A little girl just told me how to read hieroglyphs that scholars have been trying to understand for decades. In Korea, at the ancient dolmens near Gochang, something similar was happening. Farmers and shopkeepers who had lived normal lives were suddenly speaking in Old Korean that hadn't been used for 1,000 years. But they weren't just speaking it, they were discussing complex ideas about astronomy and physics. Young Tae-min, a high school student, was drawing blueprints for a machine that could bend space and time. He had failed his math class last semester, but now his drawings showed calculations that made university professors scratch their heads in confusion. "I dreamed about this machine," Tae-min told his teacher. "It talks to other machines across the galaxy, machines that are sleeping, waiting for the signal." Admiral Thekmore was getting more worried by the minute. His sensors showed that human ships were moving in impossible coordination. No communication signals were passing between them, but they moved like parts of one giant mind. "Admiral," his chief science officer said with fear in his voice, The humans are using technology we don't understand. Their ships are creating energy, fields that shouldn't be possible with their primitive engines. But they weren't primitive anymore. Captain Hyunwoo found that he could see patterns in space that showed him exactly where enemy ships would move next. His pilots were flying like they had trained together for years, even though many of them had never met before. "This is impossible," Mina said, watching the tactical display. "Our pilots are making flight patterns that we never taught them. They're flying in geometric shapes that are somehow making our shields stronger." Meanwhile, Dr. So Young discovered something that made her hands shake. The symbols that people were drawing all over the world weren't random. When she put them together on her computer, they formed a map of the galaxy showing the locations of sleeping defense networks on hundreds of planets. "Jinho," she called her friend urgently. "I think our ancestors weren't primitive cave people. I think they were something much more." As the energy continued to spread, more humans began to remember. They remembered being part of something vast and ancient. They remembered technologies that could reach across space and time. Most importantly, they remembered why those technologies had been hidden. The Vorthan fleet had awakened something they couldn't possibly understand, something that had been waiting patiently for the right moment to return. Dr. So Young Kim stared at her computer screen in shock. The pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together, and the picture they made changed everything she thought she knew about human history. "This can't be right," she whispered to herself. But the evidence was all there. The energy signatures from ancient monuments weren't random. They formed a network, a massive planet-wide network that had been sleeping for over 12,000 years. She called Dr. Jinho in Egypt. "Jinho, I need you to run a test. Measure the exact distance between the pyramids and the closest ancient site in Libya." "Why?" Jinho asked. "Just do it, please." After 10 minutes, Jinho called back. "So Young, this is weird. The distance is exactly 1,000 kilometers, not 999 or 1,001, exactly 1,000. So Young felt her heart racing. "Now measure the distance to the site in Sudan." Another perfect number, 1,500 kilometers exactly. "So Young, what's going on?" "Our ancestors built these monuments in perfect mathematical positions. The whole planet is covered with them, and they're all connected." So Young's voice was shaking. "Jinho, I don't think our ancestors were primitive at all." Meanwhile, in space, Captain Hyunwoo was experiencing something that felt like memories, but they weren't his memories. He saw images of Earth as it was long ago. Not the Earth of cave people and simple farmers, but an Earth covered with beautiful cities that floated in the air, and ships that could travel between stars in seconds. "Captain," Mina said urgently, "you need to see this. Our communications officer, Young-soo, is speaking in some kind of code, but our computers are understanding him and following his instructions." Hyunwoo walked over to communications officer Lee Young-soo, a quiet young man who usually only spoke when spoken to. But now Young-soo was speaking rapidly in a language that sounded almost like Korean but was different, ancient. And somehow the ship's computers were responding to his words like he was giving them orders. "Young-soo," Hyunwoo said gently, "what are you doing?" Young-soo looked up with eyes that seemed much older than his 25 years. "I'm waking up the sleeping systems, Captain. They've been waiting so long to hear our voices again." "What?" "Sleeping systems. The ones our people built before the Great Hiding, before we pretended to be primitive to survive the dark time." At that moment, everything clicked in Hyunwoo's mind. The memories flooding his brain weren't fantasy, they were real. Humans had once been the most advanced species in the galaxy. They had built an empire that spanned thousands of star systems. But something terrible had happened, something that forced them to hide their true nature. "The destroyers," Hyunwoo whispered, the memory coming to him like a forgotten dream. "We had to hide from the destroyers." On Earth, similar revelations were happening everywhere. In Korea, at the ancient dolmens, Professor Nam Ki-jun was studying the symbols that local people were drawing. But 8-year-old Park Hae-won, the Ai, daughter of a local shopkeeper, walked up to him and began explaining what the symbols meant. "These aren't just pictures, Professor," little Hae-won said in a voice that seemed too wise for her age. "They're instructions. instructions for machines that are buried under the ground. What machines? Professor Nam asked. The machines that make the shields and the weapons. The machines that talk to the ships in space and the monuments on other planets. Haywan pointed to different symbols. This one turns on the planet's magnetic field amplifier. This one activates the quantum communication array. And this one, she paused, looking scared. This one wakes up the Guardians. Professor Nam felt dizzy. Haywan, how do you know this? I remember, Professor. We all remember when the network turns on. Our people hid the memories in our blood, in our bones, in the deep parts of our minds. They're all coming back now. In space, Admiral Thekmore was becoming more frightened by the minute. His science officers brought him report after report of impossible things. Human ships were creating energy fields that bent space around them. Human weapons were firing beams that didn't behave like any known physics. And strangest of all, his own computer systems were starting to malfunction when they got too close to human ships. Admiral, his chief science officer said with a trembling voice, I've been analyzing the energy patterns coming from the human ships. Sir, I think I know why they look familiar. Tell me. They match the ancient records, sir. The records of the first ones. The species that seeded the galaxy with life before the Great Dark Time. Thekmore felt ice in his veins. Every species in the galaxy had legends about the first ones. The mysterious advanced beings who had created and guided younger species eons ago, then vanished when the galaxy became dangerous. Are you saying? Thekmore began. Yes, sir. I think the humans are the first ones. They didn't disappear, they hid. They made themselves look primitive and waited. Dr. So-Young finally understood the full truth as she watched her instruments. The ancient monuments weren't just connected to each other. They were connected to similar monuments on dozens of other planets. Planets that were now home to the species attacking Earth. The humans hadn't been conquered by aliens. The aliens were their own children, their own creations, coming home without knowing it. And now the parent was waking up. All across Earth, the ancient monument suddenly blazed with energy that made the alien sensors scream warnings. Dr. So-Young Kim watched in amazement as the stone circles at her site lifted off the ground, floating in perfect formation 20 meters above the Earth. They spun slowly, creating patterns of light that shot up into the sky like searchlights calling to the stars. But they weren't just lights. They were weapons. Captain Hyunwoo felt the moment when everything clicked into place, the memories flooding. His mind weren't just images anymore, they were instructions. Complete blueprints for technologies that made alien science look like children playing with toys. Young-soo, he called to his communications officer. Can you activate the planetary grid? Young-soo nodded, his eyes now glowing with the same soft light that came from the monuments below. He spoke words in the ancient language, and every human ship in space suddenly transformed. The small defense stations that the aliens had laughed at began to unfold like metal flowers. Hidden panels opened to reveal weapons that hummed with impossible power. The tiny human fighters grew energy wings that stretched for kilometers, creating geometric patterns in space that made reality itself bend around them. Admiral Thekmore watched his tactical display with growing horror. What are they doing? He demanded. Sir, his science officer said with a shaking voice. They're turning space itself into a weapon. Our shields can't protect against attacks that come from the fabric of reality. Lieutenant Commander Mina Lee stood next to Captain Hyunwoo as their small defense station became something magnificent. The walls turned transparent, showing the vast machinery that had been hidden inside all along. Machines that worked with quantum energy and folded space, like paper. How long has this been here? Mina asked in wonder. Always, Hyunwoo said, his awakened memories providing the answer. We built these stations to look simple on the outside, but inside, they carry the power to reshape solar systems. On Earth, people were no longer just remembering. They were acting. In Korea, factory worker Choi Jun-ho suddenly understood how to operate machinery that wasn't even visible. He pressed his hands against the ground near the ancient dolmens, and massive structures began rising from beneath the earth. Structures that had been waiting underground for 12,000 years. The same thing happened everywhere. Near Stonehenge, Farmer John Smith felt the awakening too and helped guide a huge crystal tower as it emerged from below the monument. In Egypt, Dr. Jinho watched the sand around the pyramids fall away to reveal a complex of buildings that made modern technology look like stone knives. So young, Jinho called excitedly. The pyramids aren't tombs. They're energy generators. Massive ones. And they're all connecting to each other. Dr. So-Young Kim could feel the planet itself awakening under her feet. The network of ancient sites was coming online, and Earth was transforming from a simple world into a fortress that could defend itself against anything. But the most amazing change was happening to the humans themselves. Young Park Tae-min, the high school student who had been drawing strange blueprints, now found that he could see and understand things that university professors couldn't even imagine. He could look at the alien ships in the sky and know exactly how their engines worked, where their weak points were, and how to disable them without firing a shot. Captain Hyunwoo discovered that he could coordinate not just with his own crew, but with every human in space and on the planet. Their minds were connected through the ancient network, sharing information faster than light itself. "Mina," he said, "tell Fighter Squadron 7 to move to position Delta 9. "Sir, we don't have a Fighter Squadron 7, Mina said. "We do now," Hyunwoo replied. On his display, new ships appeared, ships that had been hidden in asteroids, on the moon, and in secret bases across the solar system. Ships that looked like they were made from light itself, but could cut through. Alien armor like it was paper. The first attack came without warning. Human fighters didn't fire missiles or lasers. Instead, they flew in patterns that created waves in space-time. These waves hit the alien ships and simply turned off their engines. Massive warships that had conquered dozens of worlds suddenly found themselves floating helplessly in space. Admiral Techmore screamed orders at his fleet, but nothing worked. "Fire everything, all weapons!" The alien ships unleashed enough firepower to destroy planets, but the energy beams hit something invisible around Earth and simply disappeared. The planetary shield wasn't made of metal or energy. It was made from folded space itself. "Admiral," his panicked science officer reported, "their defense system isn't blocking our weapons. It's sending them somewhere else. Somewhere, not here." Dr. So-Young Kim watched from her floating stone circle as the alien attack was effortlessly deflected. The ancient network wasn't just protecting Earth. It was teaching the aliens a lesson about the true nature of power. "We never wanted to fight," she said to herself, understanding the full plan now. "We just wanted to see if our children had learned wisdom." The counterattack had begun, but it wasn't about destruction. It was about education. Admiral Techmore stared at his main screen in complete shock. His science officers had just shown him something that made his 4 hearts stop, beating for a moment. The genetic data was impossible to argue with. "Run the test again," he ordered, his voice barely a whisper. "Sir, we've run it 12 times, his chief science officer said. "The results are always the same. The humans, their DNA contains the base genetic patterns that all our species were built from. Every species in our collective has human DNA as the foundation." Techmore felt the floor spinning under his feet. "You're saying?" "Sir, the humans are our ancestors. All of us. Every intelligent species in the galaxy came from them." On Earth, Dr. So-Young Kim stood in the center of the floating stone circles, watching data flow across holographic displays that hadn't existed moments before. The ancient network was showing her the truth about human history. The real truth. 12,000 years ago, humans had been the first species to achieve true galactic civilization. They had traveled to empty worlds and carefully guided the evolution of primitive life forms, helping them grow into intelligent beings. The Vorthons, the Kethrari, the Zephyrians, all of them had been human projects, human children in a way. But then the destroyers had come. Ancient machines from another galaxy that ate entire civilizations. The humans had fought them for 1,000 years before realizing they couldn't win. So they had made a choice that saved everyone. They erased themselves from history. The most advanced human minds had worked together to hide all evidence of their civilization. They made their children, the younger species, forget where they came from. They buried their cities, turned their starships into asteroids and made themselves appear primitive. Then they scattered across the galaxy, pretending to be just another young species while secretly watching over their children. Captain Hyunwoo felt tears running down his face as the full memory came back to him. He remembered the day the decision was made, the day billions of humans agreed to sacrifice their civilization to protect the species they had helped create. The destroyers moved on, he said to Mina, who was also crying as her own memories returned. They thought the galaxy was empty of advanced life. They never found our children because they were looking for us. Lieutenant Commander Mina Lee wiped her eyes. How long did we watch over them? Always, Hyunwoo said. We've been watching for 12,000 years, guiding them quietly, making sure they grew strong and wise. Today was supposed to be the test. Young Park Taemin understood it too now. The invasion wasn't really an invasion. It was a graduation exam. The young species had grown powerful enough to threaten their hidden parents. Now humanity had to see if their children had learned the most important lesson, when to fight and when to show mercy. Dr. So Young Kim activated the planetary communication system. Her voice would now reach every ship in the alien fleet, every human on Earth, and every monument across the galaxy. Children of the stars, she said gently. You have grown strong and mighty, just as we hoped you would. You have built great fleets and conquered many worlds. But today you came to conquer your own birth world. You came to destroy your own creators. Admiral Thekmore heard the transmission and felt something break inside his chest. Not his body, but something deeper. The memory of legends his grandmother had told him as a child. Stories about the first ones who had loved the galaxy so much they gave up everything to protect it. We are proud of your strength, Dr. So Young continued. But we are sad that you chose to use it for conquest instead of protection. The galaxy is full of young species that need guidance just as you once did. You can choose to be their destroyers, or you can choose to be their guardians. Captain Hyunwoo stood on his bridge, no longer hiding what his ship really was. The simple defense station had transformed into a vessel of impossible beauty, covered with patterns of light that showed its true nature as a guardian ship. We offer you a choice, he broadcast to the alien fleet. Join us as protectors of the young worlds. Help us guide the species that are just learning to reach for the stars, or continue your path of conquest and face the guardians who have been sleeping, waiting for this day. Admiral Thekmore looked around his bridge at his crew. They were all staring at him with the same expression. They had come here as conquerors, but now they understood what they really were. They were children who had tried to hurt their own family. Admiral, his science officer said quietly, what are your orders? Thekmore thought about all the worlds his fleet had conquered, all the younger species they had enslaved or destroyed, species that might have been their own cousins, guided into existence by the same loving hands that had created his own people. Send a message to all ships, he said finally. Stand down all weapons. We want to come home. Across the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds, ancient monuments began to glow as the greatest civilization in history stepped out of the shadows, ready to guide their children toward a better future. The evolution was complete.